not a here we go, but it's a here we are. Liverpool have finally come. It was coming. That day was coming. It was, wasn't it, Ben? That Liverpool and the interest of Liverpool in the prized asset of Newcastle, Alexander Isak, they have finally formalized their interest this morning. But this late afternoon, there was a bit of a twist, and Liverpool Twitter went into complete meltdown. And it was only right for us to bring you back. How we do, my friend? We keep meeting each other on screen after 3-4 days, but here we are. The story hasn't ended and the story keeps on developing. Ben, I know you only got 15-20 minutes, so I'll keep it short, sharp, and concise from my end, but just give me a bit of the sequence of events as to what's been occurring today, mate.
Yeah, this has all happened in roughly 12 or 16 hours. So in the morning, Newcastle United received an offer from Liverpool, which I'm told was £110 million, no add-ons. So actually below the 120 million number that had been indicated to Newcastle before Hugo Ekitike signed for Liverpool, but crucially a much more preferable structure, because would you rather have 100 plus 20 and those 20 million maybe be harder add-ons to get, or just a guaranteed 110? But if you want that 110, no add-ons. And after some conversations internally at the very top of Liverpool's hierarchy whilst they were in Asia, they decided to offer Newcastle United the guaranteed money, but there are no add-ons on the offer that was rejected. Now, Liverpool actually bid with some optimism and confidence. They thought it would stand a chance because of the situation, the fact that Newcastle are looking for replacements, and they were expecting maybe a bit more deliberation and ultimately some engagement. And then if that's your starting offer, maybe naturally, logically, Newcastle would say, okay, make the 110, 115, definitely have some add-ons on top. And you might have a point where you can start talking about the finer points of a deal. So that was kind of Liverpool's perspective, that if they were going to place a bid, it would be with optimism and that it might stand a chance. And I think, speaking to sources, Liverpool were quite surprised because the bid was robustly and instantly and strongly rejected with no engagement whatsoever. And this is why, after further conversations internally at Liverpool, as it stands, and as I broke, and I stress as it stands, because it's very easy to see something on social media and then in 3 weeks' time come back to it and say, wait a minute, as it stands, Liverpool have no plans to place the second bid. In other words, they're not upping it, they're not improving it, they're not going back, they're not engaging as of now. But there is a very big difference between pulling out and currently not placing a second bid. So if, and this is the really crucial part, Newcastle offer encouragement and reach out to Liverpool and say there's a deal to be had, then of course things could change. But right now, there are no imminent plans for a second bid, as I revealed, and I think is quite well backed up now by several other outlets. So,
Ben, but when you came on last time, you said Liverpool will not bid blindly. So what changed?
And they didn't. And that's why I think they're surprised. So there was no blind bid.
Well, where was the encouragement? What made
well,
them
let's
bid?
just kind of go into the context first, and then we can sort of come on to that part, because I think the full story is needed. If ever there is a saga where you want to listen to the context and not go on your social media feed and just try and get the bite-sized parts, this is it. So now the ball is in Isak's court. And I think this is a really important 24, 48 hours, because scenario one, he sees that Liverpool haven't succeeded with their first bid and he reintegrates. And then the PIF part of Newcastle, who control the club, would love him to sign a new deal. And I'm told that they're prepared to give him an out as well, where he can still leave in a year's time. Or Isak may double down. And then what if the player goes, I don't want to come back, I don't want to train, I don't want to make myself available for selection, and that won't change until September the 3rd when the window shuts. Then you've got a long, long period of time in which maybe Liverpool, through Newcastle indicating they've changed their position, might come back. So we need to distinguish here between no plans as it stands to make a second bid and pulling out the race. They've not pulled out the race, but they've got no plans to bid unless Newcastle give them direct encouragement. Then coming back to your question, which is very valid,
Yeah.
the plan has never been and will never be to bid blind. So Liverpool have taken their time. They've allowed all the noise to play out on the Isak side, not playing against Celtic in that friendly, not going on tour. And after 2 weeks of that, and it being clear that terms with Isak won't be a problem, they decided, okay, we've already made our approach 2 weeks ago to Newcastle. They know what's coming. Are we going to go with this British transfer record with add-ons, or are we going to offer them a large amount of money, all guaranteed, knowing that they need to move in the market? And I think they decided to do it today because Newcastle are in a position where they're about to try and bid for Benjamin Sesko. They might go to Villa for Ollie Watkins. They might go back to Leipzig for Lois Openda. Johan Wissa's pushing for a move. If they want two attackers, those two attackers are going to total 100 million or more. And ultimately, they only get those two attackers financially within their PSR position if Isak departs. So I think Liverpool decided the timing was right. And genuinely, I think they felt they were informed. They felt that the valuation was close enough to what they'd already told Newcastle United, because structure of a deal will always alter that valuation. So don't get hooked on British transfer record. You could bid 100 plus 50, and 50 could only be if Alexander Isak scores 100 goals a season. And you go, okay, we're probably only going to get 100. Or you could bid 110, no add-ons, but say you can have it tomorrow, go out there and buy Sesko, go out there and buy Wissa, and so on. So I think that was where they needed 2 weeks to decide what is this valuation. But the other thing as well, which I think is equally important in all of this, is that Liverpool bid that number. And I know it seems strange now it's been rejected out of hand. Liverpool bid that number, coming back to my reporting and the point that you mentioned, because they came in with what ultimately was misplaced confidence, but with confidence that if you start at 110, this is going to be engaged with, this is going to be negotiated with. So you've got to give yourself a bit of leeway to go a little bit higher, maybe add those add-ons and so on. So there's the big surprise, that they didn't think they were bidding blind. They thought they were putting down a number with a serious chance of shaping, of engagement, of finessing, of refinement. And actually Newcastle United said, nope, rejecting it in a matter of minutes. We don't want to engage. We don't want to speak to you. And that's why now we're in a position where Newcastle have to inform Liverpool, you can enter the race and we will discuss it with you. Otherwise, they have no plans to place that second bid.
So is this where we're at? Where Liverpool found some encouragement, saw some encouragement, saw the right moment, placed the bid of £110 million. And the nature of the bid is reported by yourself exclusively. You said it was Newcastle what was the word you used? Futile. So is this Liverpool saying, fine, you need the money? Last year you had someone like Minter to sell to Brighton. You had Anderson to sell to who did they sell? Nottingham Forest. Longstaff is the only player that's left, and they got about £12 million from Leeds. Liverpool know that they need the money. They don't have the sellable assets. So is this Liverpool putting it out in the media that, fine, if you're not reasonable and not willing to negotiate reasonably on the table, then we'll simply walk away, because there will be a moment in the window where you will want to come and sit down on the table.
Yeah, there's no reasonable or unreasonable here. You've got a player that wants the move. There's no doubt about that. So Isak's pushing, and that's what I mean about, does he just return now or does he double down? And if he doubles down, arguably Newcastle are in a weaker position with a long time of the window going, because they need him to train if they're going to have him. And we're not even talking about deadline day. We're talking about the opening game of the Premier League season. Imagine if he refuses to play, refuses to integrate, is removed from the match day squads, every single press conference, every single match day, not just September the 3rd, but between now and the first game of the season, it's all going to be about Isak. Does he do the Premier League launch? Does he do media? Is he in any of the marketing? Is every single window for Eddie Howe an update on Isak's future? And then when he names his first match day squad, which again is still 2-3 weeks before the window shuts, it's going to be Isak. So I think the tactic from Liverpool is very much, we're going to put down an offer that we think Newcastle will engage with. As it turns out, they didn't, but Liverpool did go in quite optimistic. Then you have a backing off, which either allows them to have some distance as they work discreetly, or alternatively wait for Newcastle to realise that this is a massive problem now, because there's a formal offer. So if Isak does double down and go, I think that's fair, or why didn't you engage, or it's not far off what the asking price should be, then suddenly you got a player that may go from not wanting to be part of pre-season to not wanting to be part of Newcastle United, period. And I come back to what I said before, that there's always been two extremes here, because it's untenable, in my opinion, for Alexander Isak to just stay at Newcastle United. So my understanding, as I think we said in the last show, is extreme one, he still leaves, which is why not bidding as of now and pulling out are two separate things. They've done the first, but not the second. And then the other extreme is that Isak agrees to stay on the premise that he's allowed to leave in a year's time. And then it's kind of a similar scenario, because Liverpool would obviously be back in 12 months' time. But I think it's abundantly clear now that the ability for Isak to just stay and not sign a new deal is probably not a scenario that either club can actually handle now, because Liverpool will know there's encouragement if he doesn't sign a new deal, and Newcastle will know that just forcing him to stay at the club without getting him to sign a new deal is near impossible. And then I think, has the bid unsettled Isak? That's probably Newcastle's perspective. But ultimately, before the bid, Isak was unsettled because he ran away to his former club Sociedad to train. So I don't think this bid changes how unsettled the player is or was. I think he's entered into the summer wanting Liverpool before Liverpool were even formally at the table. So if the player's unsettled, this bid hasn't done that. What's basically happened is that Liverpool have formalised the interest because the player's unsettled, rather than assuming Liverpool have bid to unsettle the player. And that's where I think we stand at the moment. But obviously it's a moving situation. Even now, I'm getting several messages and several sources giving several different accounts of what may or may not happen. So I would keep your eyes peeled, because I don't think the door is shut for Isak to join Liverpool. I just think there's no second bid planned as of now, as I reported, and I think is widely backed up by other outlets.
Ben, if you get a special message whilst we're on air, feel free to share it, of course. But if the player is doubling, have you heard from your sources that can we expect the player to double down and hand in an official transfer request? Is that
a transfer request? I don't think a transfer request makes the blindest bit of difference. He's effectively given a de facto transfer request. Gone are the days where if you put it in writing, it makes any difference. If he tells them he wants Liverpool, which he's already done to my knowledge, he's told them he didn't want to go on the Asia tour. He's told them he didn't want to play against Celtic. He may tell them he doesn't want to play in Premier League games. So if you suddenly write a nice little email saying, I hand in an official transfer request, other than, I suppose, putting it out there definitively in the public domain that he wants to leave, nothing else really changes anything. And transfer request or no transfer request, Alexander Isak wants Liverpool. This is more about, are Newcastle going to change their position and offer any encouragement? And if they're not, then Liverpool will stay a safe distance and revisit it at a later date. But I think what complicates it is what I said before. You got to get your head around two things in this story, which is where social media doesn't help, because people want to cling to, will he join, won't he join? First thing to get your head around, no plans to place a second bid, not identical to pulling out, walking away, not going to happen. It means no plans now, but Newcastle could obviously change that by actually offering Liverpool some encouragement. And then the second thing is, again, it will not stay as is. I'm really confident in saying that even though in theory there are three options, he extends at Newcastle, he stays at Newcastle, he goes to Liverpool, I think there are only two options, because that middle option is untenable. So either you get a Morgan Gibbs-White type situation where out of nowhere he extends for a year, likely with the ability to leave in 12 months. And you never know, that might not be a bad thing for Liverpool, because they might get him cheaper, they might get him easier, and they may still land him. And that's why, as I've reported many times, Liverpool want Isak, whether it's now, whether it's January, whether it's next summer. So that's one possibility. And then obviously at the other extreme, things change and Liverpool go from no plans to place the second bid to getting a call from Newcastle United later in the window saying, actually, now the player is pushing, now he refuses to play potentially, now we've got our replacements in, bid again. And I think this is why they've wanted to put down the 110 early. So don't look at the 110 as odd because it's below 120, it's below a British transfer record. You're never going to, even with confidence, place a final offer as a first offer. And Liverpool will know, as with Florian Wirtz, that Newcastle, even if they wanted to sell, would turn down whatever the first offer is. So if you come in at 120 plus 10, as was wrongly reported by some, then if they want to sell, they're going to be pushing for 140, 150. If you bid without add-ons and you bid at 110, the first thing Newcastle are going to do if something changes is add add-ons, put 5 or 10 million on that 110, and suddenly you're at a 110 plus 10 or a 120 plus 10. And I think that's the ballpark that Liverpool probably felt in making this first bid might be possible, but it needs that Newcastle engagement. So keep your eye on these two things, that no plans to place the second bid as it stands and pulling out are different. And in addition to that, there's three possibilities here, but the middle one of just it staying as is probably untenable. And I think Newcastle realise they have to get Isak to extend or they have to sell Isak. And that's probably an internal discussion as to whether or not they're going to make a play at Isak first to keep him for a year, or whether at some point they're going to come back to Liverpool and say, actually, we would like to have a conversation with you.
Admin is in the building, 2,500 people, only 240 likes. Come on, people. We're giving you the content. We're giving you the best journalists out there reporting exclusively on the Isak situation. And the least we expect from our beautiful community, our brilliant community, is smash a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're feeling generous, head over to the BNR Ultra membership. It's $4.99 a month and enjoy all the exclusive content coming your way. You mentioned the valuation of the player, Ben. Can you see Liverpool going towards the 150 mark, just, regardless of how it's structured?
No, not necessarily 150, but again, the number's irrelevant. The structure is everything with this kind of deal, because whatever Liverpool decide to pay will be contingent upon player success at the club and team success at the club, in which case you're always glad to pay the add-ons. If you're saying, I'll give you $1 billion, and that $1 billion is activated in add-ons if Liverpool win 10 straight Premier Leagues and 10 straight Champions Leagues, you're like, great, because you're actually not committing to an add-on without income. So the total valuation of any prospective deal, if we get another bid, is kind of less relevant than the structure here. And I think this is why it was actually quite smart of Liverpool to just bid 110, because they've actually started quite high with a fixed fee. So of course, if there is a negotiation, you would probably expect some add-ons further down the line if anything develops. And similarly, you've not come in at 120, 130. You've not bid anywhere near 150 million. So you give yourself a lot of room to go up on the fixed fee, room to add any add-ons, but you're miles below 150. And as a result, it's a competitive bid if you only look at the fixed fee. But there's a lot of leeway and scope and invitation and almost bait for Newcastle to look at that and go, if we return and decide to have a meaningful conversation, there's lots of parts of just a straight 110 that you can do something with, because 110 isn't a British transfer record. A 110 as a fixed fee is not more than Florian Wirtz by that much. 110 as a fixed fee is not more than Moises Caicedo. So Newcastle could go 115, 120, still keep it fixed. Newcastle could take a British transfer record all up front and Liverpool could say no more add-ons. Similarly, they could balloon it up to the 120, 130 mark by making it very add-on heavy. But it's obviously not going to fall below 110 if there is a meaningful negotiation between the clubs. So a lot of people are sort of saying, why would they bid so low? Isn't it bizarre? Why would they say 120 and then bid 110? But again, it comes back to my point before that my understanding is that they actually did arrive at this bid with some optimism and confidence that Newcastle would do all the things I've said. And instead of rejecting it, go, this is a counter, put some add-ons on it, go a little bit higher with the fixed fee. They didn't. And this is why Liverpool are backing off for now. But to reiterate, because lots will get on social media out of context, backing off is not the same as pulling out.
Ben, just before you go, because I know you've got a million interviews booked, quickly, in your opinion, and if I may push you a little further on this, and you had to predict, do you think the Alexander Isak deal gets done this summer?
Well, again, not one I'm going to predict because we're dealing in facts. The facts as of now are there's no plans to place the second bid. Do I think they've walked away entirely? No. Do I think we're going to get some twists? Yes. But right now, the reason why I'm not answering that question is because it's all on Alexander Isak. That's the next move in this kind of game of chess. Ironically, it's not on Liverpool and it's not on Newcastle because Newcastle have had their rejection and Liverpool have placed their bid. So the next step in this saga is, how does Alexander Isak respond? Does he double down or does he return? And depending on what that decision is, because he's due back now, will all come down to whether Liverpool get more encouragement or whether Newcastle get more encouragement. And it is sort of chicken and egg. And this is why I think the bid was made right now, because it's just before Isak returns. So does Alexander Isak give Liverpool encouragement by saying, I'm not coming back, I'm not signing a new deal? Does he make a public statement? Does he refuse to play in the Premier League games? Or is he seen in a few days in team training? And I think that is your clue. Because if he doubles down, then I don't think this saga is over. If he goes back to Newcastle, then I think they'll take quite fast steps to put a formal offer in front of him saying, stay for another year, and then we'll allow you to leave in summer 2026. And that, I think, is the situation as of now. That's kind of how I've reported it. I know people want black and whites, but if there is one transfer saga to just have caution on and to listen to the full context, even if you think it's sitting on the fence, I think it is this saga, because it's complicated, it's expensive, there's politics at play. There's Yasser Al-Rumayyan, the Newcastle chair, who's a bit of a wild card. So usually these deals are done between your sporting directors. But remember, Newcastle don't have a sporting director, and Richard Hughes knows Eddie Howe. But I think this is a deal that eventually, if it was to get done, will be Yasser Al-Rumayyan and Michael Edwards, because Michael Edwards is the one that knows the Saudi market. Michael Edwards is the one with a relationship with Yasser Al-Rumayyan. And if Yasser Al-Rumayyan gets directly involved, and if Yasser Al-Rumayyan becomes the de facto sporting director this summer, it adds another layer of intrigue and complication, because you've got to handle the negotiation very differently when you're dealing with a prominent Saudi figure. You've got to make him think he's getting the best end of the deal. You've got to let it happen on his terms. It's not just like a business negotiation. It can get a whole lot more personal. So that's another factor in all of this as well. And once again, it's very easy to get clicks and say, he's staying, he's going, he's signing a new deal. But I've been very careful with my wording, and I've caveated it intentionally, not because I want to sit on the fence, but because it's the kind of saga that you could go to bed tonight thinking it's one thing and something very dramatic could change tomorrow. And that's why I think the door's still open. But mark my words, this is one of the most complicated transfers that you will cover as a journalist for the reasons that I've just explained.
Thank you so much, Ben. As ever, I'm sure we'll get you back on very, very soon. It's averaging around about every 3-4 days, but it could average in 3-4 hours. So we could get you back later on, but you go head off and head towards those interviews that you've got booked. Again, thank you so much on behalf of myself and the rest of the channel for giving us your time as ever, even at such a late notice. The saga isn't over. Alexander Isak story is developing, and that's why we will be back later on tonight to break down everything that Ben has told us and get your thoughts as well. We'll see you tonight. Take care. Like and subscribe on the way out, and we see you tonight. Take care and bye for now.